as a former teacher, that's a habit, so hopefully I'll be heard across the whole hall. Yes, my name is Reilly. I'm the Chief Executive of a company called Mwabu. We are focused very much on digital education, do digital learning. We look at education technology through the whole stack, and we're focused very much on schools that are, shall we say, in urban areas, or perhaps not serviced with the same quality of education that you might see in middle-class schools, or schools that are well furnished. The reason we focus on that is that we see there's a huge opportunity here. There's a massive opportunity to really start working with the breadth of learners. All learners have the same right to quality education as any other learner. And one of the things I heard in the speech just now was around curriculum reform, and I must say I'm delighted to hear that. I think that's a really strong policy. But our job as education technologists is to take that policy and turn it into practicality. To turn what is the directive from any government and any ministry and take it into the classroom. And I think it's incumbent upon us to figure out how we do that, and it's incumbent upon our industry to be working with ministries, teachers, working with departments, provinces, to really understand what's required in the classroom and to work with teachers to deliver it to learners. So it's my fortune that I had up there to say, let's assume though, for this conversation, that the curriculum meets the needs of all learners and future employers, because I think that's a critical point. So who are we? As I said, we're working across sub-Saharan Africa. We work with schools in the most remote areas, plus urban, plus peri-urban. We are currently out there in about 30,000 sales units. We work with about 8,000 teachers, and somewhere around 500,000 learners to date. And I say somewhere around because there are lots of indirect learners that we're reaching as well that we don't necessarily know about. So if we're working with a teacher who has a classroom full of 120 different students, we don't necessarily know who each of those 120 students are just yet, but we should do. And our focus is very much to bring talent, teacher and technology together. And we want to change the lives of towards 100 million learners. That's our goal. Now that's not going to happen by Wednesday. It's going to take a little bit of time. But there's a massive opportunity in front of us. And our vision is to do so by working through teachers, working with learners, and what's not mentioned on there as well is actually to work with parents. We see parents as a really critical part of the education system. So why does education matter? Well, I think it's fairly self-evident. We wouldn't be here today, would we? If we didn't believe in education, we certainly wouldn't be sat here today. We wouldn't invest our time and our energy into our children. We know education matters. But there are some hard facts that we really should be thinking through. It is quite difficult to comprehend just how vast a difference education can make, and we should be making that front and centre in anything we do, in any decision we make moving forward. As I say, as education technologists, we're not in charge of policy, but we have to be working towards these goals if we're going to be doing anything strong about it. And there are some really difficult statistics that I think we all have to take some responsibility for. Now I'm working Pan-Africa, so I don't focus just in South Africa, but South Africa should be taking the lead in some of this conversation, and indeed it does. We should be recognising that by 2030, we will be 2.1 million teachers short. There won't be enough teachers to teach the students. There will be probably 39 million students who aren't receiving any formal education. Now, if you're like me, you'll sit up and take that, and you won't like that. That's something you need to do. It's a call to arms, it's a call to action. But the problem is, there isn't a government in Africa, or probably anywhere in the world, that can afford, through budget, to fund and support the solution to those statistics. Because on top of those numbers, there's a vast number of learners that are getting an education, but it isn't a particularly good education. And it isn't going to put them in a position where they can compete with the international market. It's not going to help them change their lives in the way that we should be helping them to. We're not enabling them. It simply isn't possible. Now, I'm an entrepreneur. And clearly, as an entrepreneur, I'm interested in making a profit. It's out there. It's unashamedly so. And the reason I believe in that is because I think the only way to create a true sustainable solution to this problem is looking through commercial means. We cannot expect governments to continually find more and more and more money. The only avenue to doing so is through taxation, and that's not sustainable. And there's a point at which it can't go beyond. And equally, you have to look at the grant funding model, where you're looking at major donors and foundations and partners coming into countries, whatever the country, to prop that up and help out. But again, that's not sustainable. That's not something that we can do. So it is incumbent on our industry, in my opinion, to find new, innovative, intuitive ways to fund the solution to the problem. And do I sit here in front of you, or stand in front of you rather, with the answer to that? No. I'm not going to say here right now I have the answer, but I am going to work towards it. If I want to reach out to 100 million learners, I cannot do so at $100 per month per child. It isn't going to work. I should be trying to get that price tag down to $2 per child per month. That's got to be my focus and my target. And when I achieve that, I should move on to getting towards $1 per child. So our business, I'll bounce through this. We provide an array of services because we don't believe in putting education technology into the hands of learners and teachers and walking away. The drop and go model doesn't work. We know that. We've proven that. That's proven in every country on the planet. You cannot put a tablet in the hands of a child and expect them to raise their own standards. You cannot put a tablet or a PC into the hands or on the desk of a teacher and automatically expect that literacy is going to take off and be 20% better than it was the day before. Clearly, that's not going to work. There's a whole series of services that need to be provided by our industry to make that possible. And the only way to really achieve that through scalability and to get it to a price point that is affordable is by volume. So what does our particular product look like? We create intuitive, fun, digital content. The digital content works to help teachers move forward. There are lesson plans embedded in the product. We're helping teachers progress by going through the product. You're teaching them new capabilities. You're teaching them new techniques just by using the product. Now that works for the market we're working in. I'm not saying that it works for every tier of education, but it's certainly something that we actually believe in. And we put a lot of research into finding ways to progress that journey. In other words, how do you, into your product, embed critical skills that teachers need, learners need, to make them progress further? And this isn't a speech about trying to promote our products, although obviously it helps. You know? But a lot of what we've done has been transferable to other markets. So we've been working with the likes of Japigo, for example, and other such agencies who are providing services in health or providing services in financial literacy or conservation. You know, there's quite a long list. And they like the idea of taking our expertise around e-learning and applying it into those markets as well. So we are experts in the e-learning. We are not experts in the hardware. We do, however, focus very strongly on teacher development, because we also know, as we said earlier, there is no way a teacher is going to pick up a device and then take it into the classroom and then miraculously they are a phenomenal teacher of a much higher standard. That just isn't going to happen. It wouldn't have worked when I was in the classroom. It won't happen in the future. What we need to do is to provide ongoing, continuous support. So whoever we are within our industry, whatever company we are, we should always be focusing on how to continue to hold the hands of the teachers when they're going through scenarios that we simply can't comprehend. When that child misbehaves, when a child turns up late, when somebody isn't paying attention, we don't want those to be barriers to using our products. Because if we truly believe in what we're doing, we need to be progressing the teacher and helping them to get through those particular scenarios. I won't go through where we are today particularly, but it is worth saying that we're looking at about 25% growth year on year, and actually, on the back of that, we are changing the shape of classrooms as we move forward. But if I look now to what we experience as we go into Africa, we see some things that are perhaps a little bit shocking. Not surprising necessarily, but today they're shocking. So I call it digital non-transformation because if I take a typical classroom that I was in 2-3 weeks ago, one of the problems that you will see is that they're probably not on the grid, they don't have access to power, it's assumed, but they're not. They don't have access to connectivity. We come across teachers that have never used tablets or PCs before. They may have a phone, they probably have a smartphone, but they aren't necessarily using it in any other way than using WhatsApp or Facebook or just general connectivity. We certainly come across learners who don't know what reading is. They're not in an environment at home where reading is taking place. They haven't seen it, they don't know what it is. You're teaching pure axiomatic understanding. You're going right to the core of education before you can start to move forward. We see a lot of countries where there's a progression to teaching in English at a certain age, but there's a difficulty for people to assume that they leave a native language or their vernacular language at grade 3, for example, and then by grade 4 they can learn fluently in English. Those things just don't happen. It isn't happening. We know it isn't happening, and we can see it's not happening. These are things that we need to be moving forward on. And if you do see technology in the classroom, one of the things you tend to see are what I would call quite old-fashioned and tried and untested models of education. So you'll see you have a U-shaped lab, for example, something that I think has been proven not to work particularly well anywhere in the world, because you find that you have either looking at the screens as a teacher and you can see what they're doing, but you have the children's backs to you as a teacher. That's dreadful. You want to engage with the learners. Or if the child is turning around and watching you, they're not engaging with the devices going in front of them. So it doesn't work. And yet we still see lots of environments where people are trying to still cure and put in place these sorts of models. And that to me doesn't make sense, because there's a huge opportunity for sub-Saharan Africa to take a leapfrog right over the top of all the mistakes of other countries, to look at what's happening in education, because education is a global problem, it's not unique to anyone, and see what they're doing wrong, and then don't replicate it. And be prepared to innovate, be prepared to try something out. It's okay to fail, but learn from that and move forward. I say to a lot of the people that work in my team, we are going to learn a huge amount more from our mistakes than we're ever going to learn from our successes. So we should be prepared to make those mistakes. But there's a huge amount of investment that's going into education. It just isn't necessarily going into African education. When I started this journey with Mwabu 4 or so years ago, and I went out to my contacts, my network, my investors that I've worked with in the past, and said, I'm doing something in Africa, and it's education technology. You know me, you've seen me do this in the past, and it's worked well. The second I mentioned Africa, people backed off. The good news is that's changing. We are seeing more and more funds from within the United States, from within the UK, from Europe generally, from within Asia, certainly in the Middle East, organisations that are getting more and more interested in what education technology can achieve here in Africa, both sub-Saharan Africa and South Africa. They see the potential because they see the scale, and they see that if you move the dial just a little bit, you make a profound difference, purely down to the sheer volume of people we're talking about.